Design, our graduate show of 2025. So, to start, I would first welcome all our panelists, our esteemed guests, faculty, students, everyone to the Department of Interior Architecture and Design. Today's panel discussion theme is reductive design. I would keep my introductions very short and reduced. We have with us Director of Academics, Professor Usha Nehru Patel, our CEO and founder, Dr. Jitin Chadda with us. So I would start my introduction with the panelists. To start, we have Anika Mittal Dhawan. She is the founder and director of Mold Design Studio. Then we have Sanjay Bhardwaj. He is a partner at Team 3. We have Monica Oberoi. She is the principal architect at Spaces Design in DEFCOL. So, and then we have Vistap Bhagwakar. He is the principal architect and managing director at ADA Design Private Limited. And we have Kuntal Vyas Agarwal. She's the founder and design head at Resaiki Interiors and Architecture Design Studio. We have Nimesh with us. He is an innovation strategist. And we have our course leader of interior architecture and design, Professor Snehanshu Mukherjee. So I would say that you welcome all our panelists with a round of applause. Okay, so we have a variety of panelists from a variety of different expertise. So I'll just try to give you a little starter for the conversation, and then Professor Sanshu would take over. So reduction by design refers to minimizing material usage and wastage throughout a product's or services life cycle. From its design phase to its end of life, according to the United Nations Environment Programme Circularity Platform. It is a proactive approach to sustainability that aims to reduce the environmental impact of products and services by minimizing the resources used in their creation, use, and disposal. This is one of those typical texts that I just read out. I found it and I read it. But the point of this panel discussion is that we look at how we can integrate this term reductive design and how can we bring it in our practices. What are the different ways? What are the also different challenges? And if our panelists can together discuss further on it, that how have they already been integrating it in their practice. And the term is new, but I'm sure everybody, the attitude towards sustainability is not new for anyone who's present here. So I would ask Professor Snehanshu Mukherjee to now please initiate the panel discussion.
I'll try to make this panel discussion into a real discussion, and let's try and be serious at the same time, not officious about the way we are going to discuss. I have to admit that we first thought of the title of the talk, which is "How Much Is Enough," and as you would have read through the email, that it's inspired from Ramachandra Guha's book, very early book on the environmental impact of what we are doing across the globe. And then one of us came up with this thing that, so it means reductive design. But to be honest, we really don't know. How much is enough is something that we get a sense of. But what on earth is reductive design, we don't know. It could just be another label to, it's like LEEDs, let's say. Where you can apply LEEDs and get a platinum rating on a completely glass enclosed building. It may be that, but of course we always hope it isn't that. So what we've done is that we've collectively, that is the faculty have collectively come up with 7 talking points. I will read them out one by one, and I would request any one of you, I'll call out the name so that as a moderator I get to say who's going to speak now. So that's the way we'll go. So the first question, or rather the first statement, is that Indian society has moved from the virtue of frugality to overconsumption. I mean, I think we all remember how we were told to not leave food on your plate and, take care of everything, don't throw anything, all of that, to overconsumption, which we see all around us. And how do we define enough in design? Is it about aesthetics? Is it functionality? Is it sustainability? Or is it a balance of all these and more? So I think I would like to start with Anika. Maybe would
Yeah.
you like to?
So I feel like consumerism is a very big aspect these days, and which is why we are consuming a lot more, and you know it's become a lifestyle that we are consuming a lot more than we need, and it's obviously coming from consumerism or whatever. Uh, but we have to draw a balance, and for me, reductive would mean that to draw the balance between all the aspects that you mentioned, whether it is materiality, whether it is sustainability, whether it is the way we are designing the aesthetics, because it's not always easy to be reductive actually. It's also a very difficult task to go back and look at it and see, okay, we don't need this and let's cut it back. And I think it's one of the challenges to be reductive, because over designing is very easy, or over specification is very easy. But I think to cut back is a very difficult task, and that's what we have to achieve through all the aspects, not individually look at them. Uh,
Anybody would like? For instance, this whole thing about over specifying.
Yeah.
Why do we over specify in the first place? Would any of you like to say?
I think two parts to it. One is because it is about getting the basics in place. So the idea of thumb rule or using the thumb rule, saying that this is what we need to use in order to get things right, just right. That automatically takes away the idea of optimization, the idea of trying to be at the peak of your performance, right? And the second thing about consumption is, yes, I mean, today we are bearing the fruits of two generations ahead, and the next generation is going to be bearing that fruit even better, where they have the abundance. The idea is, how do you induce that notion in their head where they figure out that it is for their own personal benefit, that it is good for them. And we have seen that with COVID and diet. Suddenly, after COVID, everybody has tried to optimize their diet for the simple reason that it shook them, right? And they felt that it is just doesn't make. So I believe that if you're talking about behavioral change, all the three has to come together. You have to have the technology to back it up. You have to have the desire by the customer to adopt it. And once that desire is there, the business will follow. Because if it sees a business sense, today, when you talk about food, right? I mean, the nutrition market today is multi-crore Indian market. I mean, we have not seen that kind of nutrition supplement market ever, right? And the reason that has happened is because there is sudden demand by the customer to optimize themselves. So similarly, in architecture, if there is a demand which we can show the customer that, hey, if you don't do this, it benefits you, and the business sees the benefit in it, things will follow.
I would want to add something. So, we read an article where economy was on a major slump down during COVID because people were just buying things that they need. So, understanding to that thing, as a designer, what we get from our client is, अगर मैं इसमें पैसा लगा रहा हूँ तो वो शोशा दिखना चाहिए. And we get under that demand from almost all the clients. So, I genuinely feel that if we advertise and project minimalism or reductive design in that glamorous thing, then I think the perception of every client will change. And then the acceptance will come in a society where, okay, even if there is a bare wall, it is accepted. Now we put a lot of cladding and we do a lot of woodwork around it just to make it more glamorized. But I think that is not needed. But the client perception is so strict, and they think and they associate abundance.
Yeah.
They think and associate materialism, all that thing as a thing that I have a lot of money and that I want to demonstrate it. वो projection अगर change होगा, the narrative will change, and then I think the acceptance will
वो
come.
हो रहा है, इसको कहते हैं retreat design,
Yes.
retreat living.
We have off late designed 3 to 4 projects where the whole space is absolutely, matlab, all the walls are bare. It just has plaster. And now clients are accepting it instead of that time when we had to have that pressure of, okay, we need a lot of panelings, we need a lot of things. So I think that thing is changing now.
So,
So,
yeah,
the awareness. So
it's easy for us to, sit here and talk about reductive design, but there on ground, where people get specifically, they hire a consultant, a professional for interiors of their home. They have a lot of expectation. They know that there are so many things available in the market. These days, there are so many paneling materials, plastics, and PVCs. Yeah, so it is, I think, as designers, it is our responsibility to educate them. And my approach is try to tell them that these are not good for health. So health is one thing, where they understand.
Yeah.
Design, they don't understand. They want, glamour. Yeah, they want glamour. They want. So all these paneling materials, the PVCs, the leatherites, all these the glittery stuff, it's definitely not good for health. The engineered stones, or they use very harmful toxic chemicals to fabricate all this. So that is also one aspect which we must see, and try to reduce so many. These days, paneling is so common. People just like to do panel all the walls. So it's our responsibility to educate the client. I mean, this is not design. We could create a beautiful interior with just plain washed wall.
Right, but the problem that might come about is that the client says, "I'm not here in your classroom, and I'm paying you, so you do what I want you to do."
That's a challenge. But
So how do you? So when you say that you need to educate your client, how do you go and do it? I mean, how do you really? Let's not say educate. Let's say that you even want to inform the client that, look, you shouldn't do it this way for X, Y, Z reason. The client may say, "Okay, bye. I'm going to Sanjay next door to you."
no. So there we tell them that we don't need to do the entire 4 walls. We can play focus. I mean, there has to be some harmony in the design. We can create one feature wall or one part of the room which stands out. Of course, again, that balance is very important. So reductive design shouldn't be no design at all.
I guess that I can just add one. I think in terms of over specification, we have one or two issues with us. One is that we are not really analyzing what is it that we need. Okay, now there is a kind of inertia that we have with a kind of building techniques and systems that we've been following over the years, and it hasn't changed with the new way that we are constructing today. We don't do a kind of a life cycle analysis anymore. There is also an issue of the data available on that. There is only the IFC database on embodied energy for materials. Now, how many of us actually look at that? And is it possible to look at something? Okay, fine. This is what is the energy that I'm consuming at the moment, and this is going to stand for 10 years, 15 years. Do I need that plywood to be 12 millimeters thick? Can it be 8 mm thick? It's going to give way in 8 years. It's going to give way in 10 years. But that's the life that I want for the particular project. And how am I going to sort of look at a kind of a scrapping of that material? So all those aspects have to, I mean, if we start really thinking about that, then possibly we can look at a little bit more analytically what over specification really means. In terms of aesthetics, I think that is a matter of time. And I mean, in all fields, we are seeing a kind of this efflorescence of options and the way people want to express what you're calling glamour. I think it will run its circle and come back. I mean, I think that's just a question of time.
Yeah, there is a cycle. It's like in Europe, you have early Christian Renaissance going on to Baroque, and then suddenly you have modernism coming. So that happens.
I also believe that rather than using the word educate the client, we need to entice the client.
Yeah.
So it's a bit. I mean, if you can entice it, there is the Bangalore sensitivity towards design of the home, right, which Total Environment talks about. It just made it cool. I mean, and today, if you go to Bangalore, people who have the money, the minute they start to do what Gurgaon Camellias is doing, the society around them will look at them as the odd man out. So it's about making it cool. If you can make it cool and if you can entice them to that world,
narrative and move. Fascinating.
I'd like to add another dimension to the discussion. I think, enough is never enough. That's the reality when you are engaged by an architect, by a client. You're supposed to be, meeting all the requirements and the dreams and aspirations in this Pinterest world, where everybody is now giving you a brief with a lot of Pinterest imagery rather than words, thoughts, or other things. Now, we are living in times when you are supposed to maximize FARs. You're supposed to maximize returns on surfaces. There are leading architects the leading architect in Mumbai demonstrates how even vertical surfaces can be commercialized, in commercial spaces. So I think today it's more about trying to understand who's your client and what's the requirement of that particular client. And if you do not believe in that particular way of working, you should not work in that way. You should be working and choosing. There's enough work around. There's enough fish in the sea. It's more about you deciding what's your diet, what's your kind of work, because you are going to be made to work otherwise in meeting, the high level demands that, let's say, a builder has to, sort of extract from you to be able to make a project viable. If you're making a commercial, we do all sorts of projects. So when we're making a commercial building, we have to be working right down to the last bit of the FAR. No two ways about it. You cannot convince a builder to underbuild and be under the canopy of trees. He's not going to buy that. He's not going to save the trees also, by the way. If it's coming in the middle of what's, really his piece of land, he's going to be doing everything against that. We are today trying to look at how do you maximize non-FAR areas? How do you create opportunities on the terrace? How do you carve out opportunities in free of FAR basements? How do you carve out opportunities of, making spaces usable post completion certificates? So enough is never enough. It's just great to talk academically. I think we need to choose our area of work and try and apply this stuff.
Absolutely. I think very well said. Each of us need to decide where you want to be and what sort of work you're going to be doing, because there will always be a requirement for this is not enough.
I just want to say and add that at this, after you earn this field for multiple years, you can choose work. However, somebody is scouted and then they have running bills to pay, then you do not have the luxury not to choose. It's just another.
I want to just
Work is not enough.
Yeah. So that, but you see, it's a catch-22, isn't it? If you initially want to set out as a person who's ready to do any kind of work, but then you will keep getting any kind of work.
That's also adding to that. I think that also contributes to the overspecification problem.
Yeah.
Because let's call the spade as spade. Most of them who are starting new do not get paid as much.
Yeah.
And it comes from purely specifications.
I want to come back to that topic once.
Yeah.
So this over specification thing, I think what we are not doing right now is using technology for that advantage of making sure it's the correct specification. Whether it's about services, whether it's about structure, we are not going back and re-evaluating how we can minimize the over specification. So we are not using that advantage to kind of go back to the board and say, okay, how can I minimize this, or how can I design differently to make sure that it's efficient? We're not merging the two right now. I think they're detached from each other.
So what you're saying is that a lot of people are not being professional enough. That's what it means, isn't it?
No, I think they're just unilaterally looking at it.
So that's the end, being not professional enough.
I would add to that because when you talk about optimization in structures, so I happen to run a company which is called Vertical Performance Structure. It has 4 patents and it is the first of its kind in the world, where we have cracked an algorithm where we can optimize the structural geometry to the forces, right? So much so that today we can build a steel building cheaper than RCC. And it has never happened in the past. In all our performances so far, we have clocked 50% lesser resource than the nearest competitor. So one would believe that things have been going hunky-dory for us and we would have a lot of clients and people would be following us. So we got our patents in 2020 and trust me, it has been a struggle. Predominantly because there are people on the other side, one, who do not understand what you're doing. Second, there is a vested interest of project managers and people who want to prolong the entire thing. Third, even if you do it, there is not enough structural engineers who can actually vet that kind of a design.
Yeah.
Right? So it's an ecosystem problem. Yes. Today, we are finding a lot of work predominantly not because of anything else. There is labor shortage. And steel buildings can help you eradicate that. That's the principal reason why people are coming to us. Then they see that, yes, we are saving them money and stuff like that. So I would add to that, you are absolutely right. We would do that for the small thing that we wanted to do, which was structures. But technology today allows you, if you're good enough and if you're passionate enough about research, it allows you to take it to the next level. These things that we see around the parametric architecture, if you take it to the right sense of computing the things, today you can compute the hell out of anything. And that is the future which probably this generation will see.
Yeah, I think that's the perspective that will change, that we need to marry the two and kind of relook at optimization in that sense.
So I would now get on to the next question, unless Vistas, you have something to add.
We're going to cover all your questions on our own.
That's what I'm fearing. That's what I'm fearing, that I want to become redundant. No, I won't let that happen. You make your point.
I just wanted to add to him, interestingly, this is what I call the AHA syndrome. Aisa hi hota hai syndrome. And it's something I talk about in every panel discussion, and we must spread the word around. We should never be subjected to the Aisa hi hota hai syndrome because it kills creativity. If we're not able to question something because project managers or programmers who are developing a program are saying this is the way we want it. I think an architect's job starts from the interpretation of a pre-here. And if you're not going to be allowed to be questioning, it's almost like you're swimming with your hands and legs tied up, right? So I think that those are the shackles we need to break.
Absolutely. So the next question was, what does reductive design mean in today's context? And we are trying to get to that. But there is a leader. How is it different from minimalism, ornamentation, or efficiency? These are just three seemingly unconnected words. But how is it different? So would Sanjay like to respond?
So, as a design process, are we talking about a design process or are we talking about final outcome?
It's the final outcome. So what we are saying.
So definitely, I'm not a proponent of reductionism in the design process.
Right.
Okay, and that is not what Guha is talking about in any case. Okay, he's talking about reductions. He's talking about a subjectivism coming into a social and environmental consciousness. So there is that role, and you have to look at design as a holistic sort of an idea. Also, as somebody who grew up in the 80s, 90s, or whatever, I still have a modernist streak. Okay, so I am anti-ornamentation. Okay, though I do recognize it as a basic human sort of a requirement. People do want to decorate things, but I think that's a very easy one. Right? Let's take it out of the picture. So anything to do with ornamentation is not part of my design. I think if you go on sort of looking at the design that you've created, and it's easier in visual arts than actually elsewhere. So even in the visual aspect of your design, it's easier to control than in other aspects. If you start removing sort of what you think is not essential, you will get to a kind of a reductive design. It's not minimalism. Minimalism is something totally different. In the 60s, we understood it as something very different. I think people nowadays understand it something very different. So I think it's a kind of an optimum kind of a sort of usage of the elements that you have. One of the tests that I personally like to do on design is a kind of a multiplicity of different things that I can achieve with the same set of things, same set of elements, whether it's materials, whether it's construction techniques, whether it's just the way things are put together. How many different things can you solve with the same set of things? So that becomes a very, very good clue for me. And then there's the whole notion of economy of means. Like how economic are you with with what you're using? So a couple of these ideas, if you employ, I think, can get to a kind of an optimum
To a kind of a definition of
reduction in design. I mean, as for the outcome, not as a process.
Yeah. So therefore, what we are seeing, the examples that you used of this is not minimalism. So minimalism has become a style statement, like Scandinavian design or any of these things.
Yes,
today.
I mean, as if you look at it, the history of minimalism, that it's kind of a non-referential kind of a movement, going back to something else, but it now translates as a visual style, which is very easy to copy.
However, what's very interesting is that at the height of modernism, we all know about the Seagram building, and because of the bylaws of New York Fire Department, Nice had to actually put cladding to make it look minimal. So therefore, it wasn't really minimal. It just looked minimal. So even from then on, the whole idea of minimalism, of less is more, which is what he's supposed to have said, didn't really work.
No, it never worked.
It never worked.
Never worked.
So, but and maybe that's why we are now talking about reductionism, where we are saying that, fine, if it looks opulent, that's fine, as long as that's essential.
Yes.
I think what maybe reductionism means is to come down to a point where what you put up there is essential, and what you are saying is that how you've arrived at it as the design process is also an essential part.
Yes.
There are no shortcuts. So here a shortcut is not reductionism.
It will never be. It will never lead to the right.
And this is something that as teachers here, we have been trying to explain to our students that, look, there are no shortcuts in design. However, what you get as the end product may appear that you have actually gone through a shortcut because it's highly efficient. It's, whittled down to what is really required. And for that matter, I think if you look at, even earlier, one of the best examples was Japanese design, the traditional way. And for that matter, even Indian traditional crafts, they are
Essential.
if you look at Eames's India report where he talks about the lota, that's what he's saying. You can't improve on this. That's being reduced to the most efficient, the most beautiful, the most functional thing that you could have made.
Yeah, it's the creation of archetypes. Interestingly, the one way you can make a reductive design process work is really by convincing a client to prioritize on specifications and to tell him that rather than take, the average of every element that goes into making a design of a building or an interior, you should focus on certain priorities where you spend more. And therefore be reductive in the others so as to control cost. Now, cost is a language that every builder and everyone understands. You're not getting through, to them. Pick up the cost angle and use that card. I think that's one definitive way of being able to prioritize what you want, make sure you're getting it. So we're doing a hotel project for a very eminent group, and we are actually pushing them to a very reductive approach. And we are playing on the fact that the client is a builder, and most hotel owners are builders, by the way. So we're playing on that approach, and we're trying to tell them, and they are accepting it, that, let's reduce, why do you need Italian in a hotel? You're building in India. Why do you need Italian stone? Let's talk about carbon content. Let's talk about carbon footprints. Let's talk about cost of materials. They won't understand carbon content and carbon.
They'll understand cost.
But they will understand cost. And they will understand regionalism. If you are, talking about local stone and stuff like that, they'll understand, to get it close by.
But I think we need to speak the language and we need to be, I won't say manipulators, but I would say activists in the real sense. Activists, that make change happen uh, in any which way that works. Because at the end of the day, we are in a competitive line. I mean, if I don't do it, she'll do it. If she doesn't do it, he'll do it. So, we need to make use of our opportunities and tell a client that we need to prioritize. And that's a word there.
I want to add here, like in all the examples, what you have said is about a builder, a client who's looking at a commercial aspect. Now, what happens to those clients who are making it and consuming it by themselves, like residentials and owners who got big koti and all? Then such words might not help if they have a. Okay.
No. So then comes the Vastu angle. So you use you use the energy card. I think you were talking about something else. You were talking about health. So there are all these cards in your pocket. You need to be smart enough to
play them at the right time.
Energy was always, I've been doing that since a lot.
Vastu in the master.
Yeah.
absolutely.
I would also
So, I don't know how the architect fraternity will take from it, but what happens in UX design typically is something that we have evolved from minimum viable product to minimum lovable product, right? And the process is very simple. There are tools to it. There are many tools to it to do that. There are many matrices where you can evaluate your impact versus cost and understand what are the few things that you will pick up, which will make the product lovable in the most viable fashion, right? And there are ways to do that, and that is how UX design has been happening for a long time. It's just that I believe that the interactive design process in architecture, at least to the time that I had been practicing, was not happening enough. And in the other world, which is the UX design or the software design world, your time for impact is so short that you have to sit on the table together and make sure that you make the right decision, because you have to get to the market fast, right? And I think that is the same cards that he is talking about, where you sit across with the client, say कि ये option है, दोनों कर सकते हैं. This will give you this much points, this will give you this much points, but we can save it. So there are ways of doing that. But yes, there is a lot that we can learn from a design process itself in terms of how UX designers have been doing it and apply it in architecture.
I just want to add, you were talking about health and other Vastu and other related topics. It's also, we have to, when we are explaining the client what is important, we have to go back and look at design first, talk about light, energy, all of those aspects. And then the next layer is materiality, which is where I think a lot of people struggle when it comes to reductive. It's actually the focus has to come back to the key elements of light, energy, ventilation, all of those initial things that we are taught. And materiality is just the add-on. I mean, it's really, that's where the reductive part we are talking about. And personally, I feel a lot of even architects get challenged with that. They want to just use the high-end material and just go with it. I feel like they find it easier to just use luxury or products which are not necessarily reductive and make it just aesthetically nicer. So I think we can also play the time part. Time is also better.
Yes, time is money. So what Sanjay had said about the process is, I think, what everybody is kind of getting to in this whole reductive thing. However, what you just said about the materiality, it just so happens that a few days ago I had written something on LinkedIn, and it was about this. It is about the fact that we tend to separate materials from actual construction, and therefore how the place looks today. Earlier, that wasn't the case. Earlier, your choice of materials was determined by many things, from wear and tear, from structural strength, from is it appropriate for the use of that space? And it wasn't necessarily looked at as, will it look great?
Yeah.
Now it's got reversed. First thing that and I find this with so many architects or designers, that how does the place look? And that's what I think one of you said is, everybody comes to you with the Pinterest or nowadays Instagram pages and say, okay, I like this, can I have something like this? So I think that's where the trouble is. And I think reductive design is saying that choose your materials or choose the entire design process in a manner where you do something of value and not add value.
Yeah. It should
You see
put
what I
an integrated approach.
Snehanshu, I've heard of clients saying we need to clothe the building. We don't want to expose the RCC. We don't want to expose the block work or the brickwork. We want the building to wear a Versace suit. We want it to, have expensive materials. This is more the residential kind of clients who talk this way. I had a client who was into stone and he wanted to put stone everywhere. The only place I could convince him not to was on the ceiling, because I said, "Wo gir jayega." I mean, so we have all types of clients that make the world interesting. I think it comes down to what is the priority you set out with them. I often also find that they understand energy issues. So when you talk to them that, if you are going to be doing this, you're going to be getting more heat into the space. If you have more glass, they tend to understand that. But they still get overruled, in their mind by what is society going to think of, the building that they're making. Right? It's so often a case where you ask as an architect that, are you making the building for yourself in any house, or are you making it to be the best building in the colony?
And then they say,
There's no harm in being the best building in the colony, either. But I think it's a priority setting kind of thing. I think it's more about matching of wavelengths, and I'd always advise people to walk away from a client don't see eye to eye with, in the beginning, because you're going to not complete the project in any case. If that's
absolutely, they say, पैसा लगा है तो दिखना चाहिए. So that is how their narration is. However,
दिखता है वो बिकता है.
दिखता है वो बिकता है. So, however, I think इसके बाद जो generation आएगा, they'll be more informed and they'll not be driven by society.
We hope so. So let me come to the third question now, which is, can we consider traditional handcrafting as a valid reductive design method? And where does reductive design stand between traditional ways of making and industrial methods of production? So just for the context of why traditional crafting, because if you see the way a traditional craftsman chooses his materials, very often the materials are actually waste from agriculture, like the making of a mat, let's say. Then the optimization of the material used. So I have a friend who is a South African, and he had this very interesting thing to tell me, and he moved away from mainstream architecture after being hugely successful in the US, bought a piece of land in Mozambique of all places, and he does social forestry. And so he grows the timber to be used commercially, and very good quality African timber. But what he said was that he uses even the twigs. His wastage from that one tree is maybe 10%. And he says, if you compare IKEA, they waste close to 40% of the timber that they buy. Now, I had no idea that IKEA does this. But he is somebody that I know would have done his research. His name is Alan Schwartz. You can look him up. So I said, what do you do with the twigs? He said, I make them into knitting needles. And every little thing, every little piece. So now that's really, to me, the ultimate reductive design. And that can only happen in the handcrafted way. IKEA is the industrial production system where there is going to be waste. There is no other way a factory can make something without generating waste. And I think that's the reason why we put this in as to how does traditional handcrafting compare with this whole notion of reductive design? Because they will use the least amount of equipment. It relies on their personal skills between the action between the brain and the hand. When I saw, once I had gone to Beauty long ago, where all the famous terracotta temples are in Bengal, and there is a loom, there is an NGO which set up a set of looms and trained people to make Baluchari saris. And as you will know, the Baluchari saris can tell you stories of Ramayana and Mahabharata. Now, I was amazed to see that these craftspeople, the weavers, were not referring to any pattern. That is when I realized the power of craft. It was all in their heads, and they were weaving these patterns out on the saris. I can never do that. I'll have to draw something before I can replicate it.
Anshu, there's a problem now of reductive labor, reductive skilled labor, and that limits your design, and that makes your design reductive in a lighter. Saying that. Today, you just do not find the right number of craftspeople. You tell somebody to carve out something, they'll take it to a router machine or to a CNC, equipment. You will not find people doing the rough chiseled work. You want to have a brick wall and you want to have a chiseled seal on it. Try and get somebody to do it. He'll charge you more for that than he charged making the brick wall itself. So I think today's times are all about looking at what is viable. And I often feel that in the real sense, the craft is only in remote places where, which makes it affordable. Otherwise, you're not able to do it in the bigger cities. You're not able to get those people in. And they're not going to be doing it at the cost that your client is ready to pay.
Yeah, I think that's the real problem. You can get the craftspeople in, but the first thought that the client or the contractor will have is that, why am I paying so much money per hour or whatever it is when the other guy can do it for half the price? Because what they miss, I think, is the fact that when something is done really well, you achieve a quality which you won't if you shortchange the labor.
But also the time once this thing is
Time is
and these days the pressure of handovers are crazy. I remember when we were younger कि हाँ ठीक है 2 साल बाद हम उस घर में शिफ्ट होंगे, but now within 6 months 8 months the time is ticking. So I think time also is a major factor where we cannot, even if we want to engage such a hand.
when comes back to the fact, choose your clients wisely. Sorry, yes.
There are 2 or 3 issues with craft over here. I think one, there's absolutely no denying that a handcrafted thing is, it's more superior. In terms of integrity, it's right there. One of the issues I think is of equivalence, in the sense that what is the status of that craftsperson? Okay, this is to do with education and acceptability and bringing them into the mainstream. Suppose this is the master craftsman. Are we ready to say, okay, fine, he's equivalent to a PhD?
Yes.
Okay, are we ready to say that this is the kind of status that we want to give this person? Okay, so that's one. Secondly, I think in order for us to work with craft, we have to also change the way we work up practices. We cannot be sitting in office and saying, okay, fine, we're calling in vendors and saying, okay, fine, this is the kind of sampling that we want to do. No, we've got to get our hands dirty. We've got to go out and we've got to sort of look at. So, the fact that you don't find skilled craftsmen over there is because we've sort of set up a system which is
Roofed them out.
Yeah, it's consumptive, and a wood carver does not want his children to become carvers. You sort of relating an anecdote. I'll relate an anecdote. This is again a hotel building, and there's this wood guy doing these sort of wooden fins on the building, and this guy makes up. It's real teak wood fin that he's making. So he goes and he sort of balances it first. He says in the middle, and it's slightly heavier on the one side. So he says, no, this is the bottom part of the tree. I'm going to put it up in the same orientation. So that's the kind of understanding that I would never understand. You would never get from an industrially produced thing. And probably it'll last longer. Probably it'll behave better. So that kind of engagement with the material that you're working with, you're not going to get. So I think there are a couple of these sort of systemic issues which if you want to get back craft, we've got to do this.
Yeah. You have to change the way you design. And the other important thing about craft, which is when I did my research on earlier times. So before I give that example, I'd like to say here that E.B. Havel, that we should all remember from his books on art and architecture history, when he was the principal of the Madras College, he had actually brought in master craftsmen as professors.
Yeah, so.
But that tradition just went away completely. But that, don't forget, that was the time when you had Anand Kumaraswamy and all these people, Tagore, Patrick Geddes, they were all involved in trying to do something worthwhile with what we had. And of course, we moved miles away from that. That's one. But the other thing is that I realized that if you have to involve the craftsperson is capable of also designing. So it has to become a partnership. It's not like a set of drawings handed over that now you do this. Of course, there are also craftspeople who will be happy to just do exactly what you want them to do. And recently I got to know, so the Humayun's Tomb Museum has opened. I don't know how many of you managed to see it.
Yes.
It's really worth seeing. It's a brilliant, I'm not talking about the building, I'm talking about the exhibition.
Yes, it's very nice.
And Ratish, I remember telling me that they had to replicate a marble slab, which is on the grave inside the Humayun's tomb for the display. And he went to Agra where all this Pieter Dura work is done. And he said, I could not find a single craftsman who could do it the old way till somebody guided me into the gullies where there was this 80-year-old stone craftsperson who was the only one who could do it. So unfortunately, because of our not engaging with craftspeople who are all over the place, they have switched streams and now they're doing stuff which is substandard. That also is happening.
So
Yes, please. Yeah. No. I think she's been trying to say something for a
no, that's go ahead.
So I think this traditional city here doing a wonderful job.
They are.
Spark should the technology. Okay, and we are Bozak Dapper Putra. And Uttarakhand does this very fine woodworking art. So Likhai. We hard to get to see that Pantes, especially in and around Agbora. So one day I just type on Instagram and there's this artist there, Rangarawa. See, he's a generation, he's been trading, he's the third generation. His grandson is still practicing the Likhai in that Piora decent village. Okay, and he's on Instagram. And in last 1 year, he got so super and it's more based. So he's connected most dark days. And then I start to do other aquatic craft and then it's a net path. I think this generation has a lot of potential to connect.
Yeah. So what you're saying is that the way ahead is really using communication tools to make, connect the craftsperson to the designer or the person, whoever is going to employ them. Yeah. So sorry, she hasn't finished her question. Whatever.
No, I was just adding to this whole crafts conversation that if you remember, there was a time in the middle where everybody was going into minimalism, and it was like a trend. And I think we are coming back, and I think that also put craft at the back seat for a while, at least, or culture. And I think Sunday mentioned that it comes back. It has a life cycle, right? So I think now I feel with a lot of people that they now are accepting going back and recognizing what is true culture for them and how craft is important as part of our culture. And therefore, that time that went by where nothing was happening or everybody was changing their craft into minimalist stuff and all of that, that's going away, and people are recognizing what is important and what has to be valued. And then, therefore, all of this is coming back, and then now people are becoming more aware that we have to socially, economically sustain
And
what it does, and culturally, of course.
But in a more elitist framework, if I may.
Not. Yeah. That's also.
So why don't we add it in the academic curriculum? Like doctors, and before they finally get their degree, it's mandatory for them to go into a village and work.
Yeah.
So why not add it
So
to the
you know what
academic curriculum that every student must find a traditional craftsman and go out in villages and find out.
So what you're saying is exactly what the mandate is in this design college.
Excellent.
In all the departments, and that's what Usha was saying. That's our USP. Tell them that.
So we need to bring out these craftsmen from their villages, and we should encourage the next generation to continue with otherwise it's dying. And also this traditional craft is definitely more sustainable than anything else. I talk about they use local materials. traditional techniques, that will eventually reduce the carbon footprint. Yeah.
It's also about timeless design and not necessarily fast fashion. And that's with everything. Fast fashion, fast trends are not sustainable or productive in any way.
So I would say that storytelling, as Jesse was talking about, plays a very important role. I have seen the Italian design system very closely because I did my master's there and had the opportunity to see how industry works with a designer or a craftsman. And it is not that they employ a craftsman. So Achille Castiglioni is not employed by Floss. He is working with Floss. And there is a huge difference in that, because the way we look at our systems in India, we hire designers.
Yes.
They work with designers. And that shift, and then they talk about the story. I mean, well, we have a story at least twice as old as theirs. It's just that we don't talk about it. We don't work around it in the same fashion or respect. The minute you start to do that, and the industry will change.
Inish, see what Achille Castiglioni produces is a mass solution actually. I mean, somebody who be manufacturing or a big company.
Floss or...
But that doesn't happen here.
Sir, because हम यहाँ पर वो 2% 10% पे ही खेलते रह जाते हैं, पहली बात तो, as professionals. ठीक है?
For the consumption of the elite. That's the only problem.
Not really. I think that's a notion that can be broken, because I don't think industrial production that Italian does is only for elites. I mean, when a Floss makes product, yes, it is for everybody. He's just, I mean, the conversion exchange rate finds us to be on the more elitist side, nothing else.
More than
हाँ, I mean, हमारे लिए IKEA भी elite है, but let's understand that that's the bare basic anywhere else in the world. So the idea what I'm talking about is that how do we treat the other person? And that is the fundamental value system that not just in architectural education, generally in education today is missing. I mean, if you look at the problem, it's just the value system, the way you interact with the other person. Today, it's a very different and entitled way of interacting. And I think that entitlement will only take us away.
I want to add to this. I was in Milan for lighting design course, and we happened to go to a village, and there the guide was saying so good about that one person who's just weaving or doing a crochet. And then I realized that इससे ज़्यादा हम इंडिया में करते हैं, but as designers हम उस चीज को उतना वैल्यू नहीं दे रहे. And then I was telling to my team coming back, मैंने कहा ये सब तो हम कर सकते हैं, why are we not doing? So of course that was another experience that I had, and then we realized that because it's easily available, you're not valuing it.
You have a value abandoned.
Yes, and I think that should be a shift now on, that we can, and we've introduced that in my system, that we have one artist with us.
Absolutely. Why one, Asmin?
But at least one.
Whatever the finance
Whatever's required. Yeah. So now to just shift a little bit, which says the next point was, would reductive design lead to reduced user experience?
Not at all. So that's where I summed about the minimum lovable product, right? If you're looking at minimum viable product, then it might compromise on the user experience because you're looking at it. But business has realized that, and today business is using this terminology purely because they know that if they don't reach there, the user will reject it, and it doesn't make business sense.
So I can add to that, because I'm on a separate group which is with the Council of Architecture trying to do something which should benefit us all. But so we have amongst the experts, we have a person from the real estate sector who's an architect but working with one of the big time chaps. So he was saying that, today, whether it's the multinational firms or the large Indian firms, they want, when they hire a space, they want to know how environmentally safe is it?
Yeah.
And how much energy is it going to cost them? Is the air in the space better than the air outside? Because he was saying that, for instance, in Gurgaon, like in the rest of NCR, what you're breathing outside is polluted. It's poisonous. But now these companies are saying at least indoors,
It becomes a sellable product, right?
Yes. So, so therefore, if you look at deductive design from that point of view, that which is what everybody started with, that is your process correct? Is it right? Then you are adding a certain value which is sellable. Because we keep coming back to this thing that can you sell the idea convincingly? Now, coming from the real estate gang, which is whether it is DLF or JLL or any of these big movers. Now, once they start doing it, then the Gupta ji, Sharma ji is
Will be forced to do it.
will be forced, because otherwise they'll say, what's the difference? Why won't I pay a little more and be there rather than your space? So I think, yes, so user experience should actually improve.
It's always a Me Too market, because, I mean, half of the people don't even understand BIM. And I was talking about when I was in technology selling, clients would come to us and say कि blockchain बना दो, किस लिए बना दो नहीं पता, but blockchain बना दो.
They've learned the word.
They have learned the word. अभी AI चल रहा है, तो अभी AI कर दो. क्यों करोगे नहीं पता, but AI चाहिए.
So Snehanshu, I'd like to answer that, actually reductive design sees its best in places like meditation centers or reform centers.
Wellness.
At one extreme in a jail, where, you're actually reducing down things to such a minimum that a person has time to introspect and look deeper inside in all these areas. And I think it has a role to play in a certain typology of project, but try selling that maybe to somebody who's making his dream house. Unless you have a fabulous location and you're able to convince him that let's look out onto the river and keep everything else less distracting around. So I think it's all about the kind of card you play and the kind of way you try and build a narrative around the design and sell it. I think we are sellers. We are idea sellers, we are dream sellers, we are story makers. That's what we need to be. We are problem solvers. We have to do all these things and make sure that in doing that, we're serving the larger agenda of, being appropriate in our response.
In fact, I would add to that.
Of the consumption very.
I would add to that. I think
I mean, if somebody is making 200 square house or 150 square, he doesn't have the, wherewithal to even think of what you say.
सुनी सर, वो कहानी बेचने की बात है.
If somebody is having a 200 square yard house, let me sell it to you. You will tell it how important space is. You will tell him how important it is to, minimize the divisions in that space. How important it is to maximize light. So you will speak to him appropriately.
If you say micro concrete use करें, here is a very fine say for it exposure.
Sir, I think our institutions.
Cost reduction की जो बात कर रहे हैं, that is where the problem. I mean, I just cannot just use this kind of soda so to देखा चाहिए.
I think
it's a practical problem here, and in this because we have been discussing the elite audience and the line ways, we have missed out the 80% of the people who live in it.
So a whole lot of low-cost technologies are adaptive in their approach. I mean, we grew up with Professor Anil Lal, who exposed us to a whole system of building, which was, fantastic. I remember going to that place,
Zirmati Kendra.
that place, which felt like Jurassic Park to me that time in fourth year or third year. I mean, it was, you had these larger than life, creations out there. I think it's all about, appropriate technology and appropriate material for a client. And I think, you can apply a certain mindset regardless of the client's background. Yeah. And I think that process as
I haven't understood your elitism.
Stage is all the discussion that we do as this is we get to do more minimal maybe some point interchangeable complete discussion.
No, they're not.
No. Well, it's not interchangeable. That's the whole point.
So this is again, I think, somebody with the right kind of background or exposure to this kind of fakey would probably go for. That's the.
सर पैसा सबको समझ में आता है, ठीक है. अगर आप उनको बोलते हो कि आपका हेल्थ अच्छा रहेगा, आप इससे पैसा बचा लोगे, ठीक है. I don't think there is any product in the market.
Forget about there is this one. He started out with Ramachandra Guha. There's this very interesting passage that he has in that book. He says Gandhiji wears a loincloth. Okay, so it becomes
a kind of a symbol. But B.R. Ambedkar is constantly in a suit. Okay. So what's the difference? What are we trying to do over here? So from an entitled upper caste background, this man sheds his clothes and dons on a loincloth. It becomes a kind of a tyag that he has made, right? But B.R. Ambedkar has grown up in that. So he's wearing that suit. So I don't think there is anything to say that, okay, fine, this person from a Punjabi background is going to want a kind of a glitzy surface. I don't think that's a value judgment or a kind of a cultural judgment that we are making over here. No, that's not the case. Okay? If a poor man wants his wall to be plastered and he wants something else to be done on that, fine, let's give him that. Okay? But there are other, so you have to understand the situation. So I don't think it's about elitism at all.
Designer's prerogative. I had this client, a young client who wanted his house to look like a 5-star hotel. Said, I want when I come back, तो मुझे ऐसा लगना चाहिए मैं किसी 5-star hotel में आ गया हूँ. Crystal chandeliers and all that. And I found that ridiculous. I said, hotel जाना है तो you should go to a 5-star hotel. A home should be a home. I couldn't do that. In the first initial few meetings, I could make his house look like a hotel. So I think it's, you can tell the client to a certain extent, but if they want that kind of literati around, it's not easy to,
I think, yes, want to bring this discussion to basic level from where, like, as a starting point where we start, where we could start, which is that when reducing by design, a phrase, my design and expanded it as the United Nations of Summits, that's a sustainability and not appropriating natural resource of others. But I like this discussion to just elastically continue very soon is go to talk as students and combining the droid take or the computer take or whichever digital era you go on in. And that is the whole approach to design where you're not worrying about somebody that protect client and the aspirations. I in a way disagree with you. If somebody wants a Marwari, Omo, there has to be context. Just throwing out expensive materials, using more studied articles is project dependent. But reducing my design is that having enough knowledge and the long, absolutely brutal process through which you go and you reduce it to a point where all the extremely state, something that's confusing to all the type or the client must have is just coming up bare minimum, not in terms of familiarity, but in terms of exquisite design. That's what we commit to. That's what I think, personally, for myself, is this too. I'm not sure if I loved all the teachers were talking, but there was something magnificent. And that's something when we carried away with us. That is something as a teacher, I have to say, if you said steps to is go, it's up here. What kind of a designer do you want to be? And to coach famous D.T. Ramp, he says, out of 10 things about good design, one of the things he says, design less, design better. And I think you, Nimesh, you put it very beautifully.
Minimum lovable product.
And max lovable. Because it's not that design. So in that maximum lovable, there is an Italian model formula. Fine, but it should come from the, as Snehanshi said, integral process of your design.
Absolutely.
That needs. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's what it is. And that's what, and thing is in today's age, young people are engaged. So the confusion needs to be.
Ma'am, I would like to add to that. I think as professionals, and I have moved away from architecture and done all kinds of things and come back to in a way to architecture. One thing that the school never taught us was how to sell.
Yeah.
And I think that also stems from the fact that, with all due respect, a lot of people who were teaching us did not know how to sell. Right?
Going some way here right now was that even the client and the client's aspirations come inside.
Absolutely.
That is the
Yes.
first thing.
But even then,
That is the first
but
thing.
even then, what he's saying is correct. You may be doing exactly what the client expects you to do, but if you don't know how to communicate it to the client,
आधे से ज्यादा लोग अभी भी मुझे जब आर्किटेक्चर का कोई प्रेजेंटेशन दिखाते हैं तो बोलते हैं सर ये प्लान है आप यहाँ से एंटर करो वो दिख रहा है you start from there you're not even talking about why did you do what you did right and the idea is to sell that because if you're not able to sell yourself trust me people will force it to you and you will end up doing what they want you to do but if you have to sell as simple as that and that is across all design parameters all business.
So what Nimesh is saying, I'd like to put it in a formula for young students across here. You know, to be professionally successful, you need to have passion, but you need to communicate purpose.
Yes.
And if you take the two P's together, you know, you really are making it a heady cocktail. You're really doing something. You need to define your purpose. You need to have passion, and you club them together. Find the kind of client who you vibe with. Do not work with just about everybody.
Yeah. And I think some of it was taught by him at a very early on stage to us, the DNA of it, because I knew that if you don't defend it to him, he will rip you apart in the class. And that gradually got into us and said, yaar, hum to khada hona hai.
Let me tell you what he did not teach. So he taught the entire business of design, but he never taught the design of business. Say he, it's not Srihanshu, it's Ditpi the basis.
yeah. But that's as he said, because as teachers also we didn't know what to say. We were also learning the hard way, right? Yeah, sorry.
No, I was just adding that as students or as designers, I think it's also important to learn yourself how to be reductive. You know, it's like I said in the beginning, it's you design, you might have a design, you might have a brief, you might have a requirement from a client, but to cut back and hold back or to reduce and come to an optimum solution is not always easy. So you have to look at it and go back and look at it and see how you can make it more optimized.
Yeah.
That's one part. The other part is, I mean, I was discussing the same thing with Milanli, that storytelling, we don't know how to do the storytelling. So that plays a very big role in explaining the client what they want and how you are communicating it to them. I mean, how you have understood it, what they want, and how you are trying to achieve the same thing, but narrating it in a different way. Not necessarily in the...
डिजाइन बनाने के बाद कंसेप्ट शीट नहीं बनानी होती कंसेप्ट शीट बना के डिजाइन बनानी होती
Yeah.
So the last point was, how do we ensure reductive design doesn't become a form of aesthetic elitism, to take up what he was saying, and who gets to decide what is enough? Is it the context? Is it the client? Or is it the designer? And the last thing is, with reductive design, what are we really trying to reduce? So there are these, so the profound question is for the last. So this is the one. So shall I just say it again?
Say it again.
Because they're separate things. So, how do we ensure reductive design doesn't become a form of aesthetic elitism? I think we've been sort of talking about it. So the next point is, who gets to decide what is enough? The context, the client, or the designer? I think that's an important question you need to think about first. Then I'll come to the last one.
I think all of them.
No,
All of the client and the context to decide the enough. Who is really in the best position to do it? Is it the designer? Is it the client? Or is it the context? It's always the designer, isn't it?
No.
So it's
No, it's not.
it's not okay. Sanjay, please tell us.
No. Just a slightly. No. See, the context, who understands. Okay, so it's a little bit different from what we've been talking about. Like my experience with, let's say, developers, for example, has been that the only two people who will have a vision for a project will be the owner and the architect. Everybody else comes and goes and is a cog in the wheel and does their bit and goes away. Okay. So even real estate, the most hardcore real estate developers will never shy away from you talking design. Okay, so and they will actually appreciate it and they will value it. The problem is that we don't talk design.
Absolutely.
Okay, we talk efficiency, we talk cost, we talk vastu, we talk all that. No, they know all that. That's a given. That goes into the annexure. Okay, into the appendix. It's not design. I mean, if we started talking regionalism, if we started talking materiality, if we started talking design quality,
Storytelling.
you know, it is. I mean, if we behave like architects, they would treat us like architects. That's I think the value. So important thing over there.
I just missed respect to this during conversation that you all has. But Mike, is it the client when they were doing it? They have to take a full circle of it. I mean, however much you try, if his aspiration is to reach to some kind of a chandelier, kind of an aesthetics, he will not because he's so fixed on that. Because he has that aspiration. You know, what we're talking about it is like a peach circle. You have to take that hesitation as if I said of the people that they live in India. You know, we still aspire to do something which is imagined to be fantastic. Right? But there are say or bikes. Recent donation or people who already gone to the curb cycle and who's talking now much more. Which is
So उस लाइन पे ये बोलना है कि आपको 5 स्टार चाहिए या बाली का 7 स्टार चाहिए. It's 7 star. It's a
Experience it. Now people
collected, he is not experienced it. He'll buy your idea to some. There would be another that I said buy.
what is ये बोलना था सर ये तो पुरानी बातें कर रहे हो. What is evolved rally which I don't understand.
Yeah, because I deal with it every time. So I said, but I don't know what you try to beat at a mountain, which you would scoop and take, bring something, it's just fun. I mean, yeah, but then you have to respect what he brought.
Yeah.
So that you have to.
So usually,
So no. So are you talking about aesthetics?
I'm talking generally about the mindset of. He asked.
what she's, I think what she's saying is that when people come to you for whatever purpose and they have an image in their head that this is what I want.
Right.
And it's very difficult to change that to something which you think is the better option.
Yeah.
So before you respond, I just want to say that with all my students, I say this to them. I said, look, a good architect or a good designer is that person who listens carefully to the client, tries to figure out what that person wants and not necessarily go by the image that person is bringing, and then give something. Again, storytelling, communication is a different matter.
Yeah.
Give something that is better than what the client ever thought of.
Absolutely.
Because our advantage is that we, at least as the architects or designers, should know more
Yes.
that any client will ever know.
Correct.
Because that's our job. And the client's gone. Never mind. And the client has limited information, limited knowledge about what they want done. Now, the moment you start treating the client as God, that isko to mere se zyada pata hai, then you've lost that client. Then you've become nothing but a draftsperson.
Correct.
Or you are worse, you are the contractor. Or you are the translator for the contractor. Ki ye banana hai. Client doesn't know how to say that to the contractor. You come in between and say, मैं fees ले रहा हूँ, मैं contractor को बना दूंगा. Specification लिख देता हूँ, detailing कर देता हूँ, आपको वैसा का वैसा बन जाएगा. That's the wrong way of doing design. The right way is to be actually taking that idea. And the problem comes when architects don't want to listen to the client.
Yeah.
Or try and understand where the client is coming from, what they really want. Yeah, because, and I'll tell you, this is it's a funny story that there was a big time painting contractor from the British times onwards, and he had a friend in, what's that place? Shalimar Bagh side, And I've been there very rarely, so I was told that, yaar, unko jaake ghar unka ban gaya hai, please, they want some new advice on the insides. So I went there just to oblige. And of course, I was shocked by the house. It was like President's house on a tiny plot on steroids, if you can imagine. So I was so stunned by it, I didn't know what to do. So I walked in and it was under construction. And this guy, he turned out to be probably a millionaire. He's one of those grain merchants from Chandni Chowk. So I discovered that Shalimar Bagh, Ashok Vihar is filled with these guys from old Delhi who are these fabulously rich grain merchants, but they moved out because वहाँ रहने का भी नहीं है और दुकान ही है सिर्फ. So he asked me random, तो आप क्या suggest करते हैं? I didn't know what to suggest. I looked at the double I, triple I. Whatever came to my head, I told him something. ना यहाँ आप ये सोच सकते हैं. And that guy was impressed. So he said, ये तो बहुत अच्छी बात है. आप और हम चल लेंगे. I didn't get what he was saying, that was the lingo. So then I realized what he's saying, that you and I will now get together and you will design for me. I said, no. Because I realized beyond that bright idea, I had nothing else to contribute. So it's a combination of both things that we were talking about earlier. Choose your clients carefully. Don't fall for this thing, oh, he's now asking you to do it. Are you even capable of doing what he's asking you to do?
Yep.
And of course, the thing is that you need to communicate. No, the important thing is that you have to save your own life, right? I mean, you cannot, if you are of a certain kind, you cannot do work of a different
Yeah, your wavelength has to match, and design is very subjective.
Yeah,
Like
it
you
is.
can't necessarily.
When it comes to houses.
Yeah. I mean, you can't necessarily, when it comes to aspirational design or whatever, it's very subjective. And the wavelength has to match somewhere, like you said. That
Otherwise, it won't work. Sanjay, what were you going to say?
No, nothing more.
Yeah. Oh, okay. You just told me.
It's a kind of stories they said, tell you small stories.
Can we hold on to it? Can we hold on to that story? Because the last thing is this. With reductive design, what are we really trying to reduce? This is the whole crux of this discussion. Who is ready to answer this or think about it and talk about it?
I think I'll just give a very small example. When we are designing, I'm talking of a very small object like a drawer and reduced design or reduced material where I'm coming from. Normal 1 year, 2 year experience architect designers don't know ये चीज ऐसे भी बन जाएगी. So I think where I'm coming is knowledge. If you know how it is done in any other alternative way,
Right.
then you can contribute to this whole journey and path is what I can submit as. कि if you have that knowledge कि ये चीज ऐसे नहीं ऐसे भी बन सकती है, इसमें इतना नहीं इतने से कम material लग जाएगा. I think that is what we don't have. We see Pinterest images, we get into the documentation of it and we submit the AI rendered images. I think this is where we are heading now. And I think we go back and gain some knowledge on site. I think we'll be able to do a better job.
Try to reduce the count. Try to reduce time, money, mixing, trying to reduce clutter. I think over designing is also clutter to a certain extent. So there are a lot of things.
I'd like to add, I think, at a certain age in life, you start realizing life is about energy management. And you're trying to reduce the unnecessary waste of energy. Either you opt out, you say no, or you go ahead by explaining an agenda, or the end result is you need to reduce wasted energy and wasted intent. I think there is, great importance in us learning the power of no.
Yeah.
The power of no is so important for a design field where if you do not agree, with a certain way of thinking, you should be saying no. And it's taken me 30 years to realize that.
Yeah, you have to experience it, yes.
Sometimes it comes to mind to answer this question is reduce the superfluous. So the superfluous has to be defined.
Absolutely.
Because it has someone wants a shampoo. That's not the person but how we get to the apple orchard leaves any does. Then if you look at it traditionally, even before the climate change was warming, when people were designing, I'm talking about the architecture and design at 40, 50 years ago at least, there was no mention of climate change pathologies. And yet people were designing with very conscious कि ज़्यादा नहीं खर्च करना है. It didn't come from how poor you were or how much. It came from a basic knowledge of what is it about. And to me, some most significant designs have come up. And not just architecture designs, I think 80s, 90s, etc. So it product design, other kind of design, so that really were see that suddenly achieved happy. That really happened where
In the 90s, because of liberalization.
I think, ma'am,
Now, Zada, they have so much, they don't know how to spend, where to
The-
spend. So that's the
No, she's not talking about spending.
explain the client's offer specification or the project manager either. I want to put it squared onto the design. And the problem right now is that can designers really design? They got confused because as bus imagery that's coming tomorrow. You haven't wanting to process. Somebody said that you give up a party. Let's say call it's what happened to New York apartment. It's very easy for a designer to visually put New York apartment things together and make it. But what they happen to the designer is the process which I couple of weeks enough to send it up about is you don't go through that.
Yeah.
You can never get it right. Then you're supposed to use laptops.
I think, ma'am, this generation, unfortunately, by design will have to be reductive because anybody who's now staying in Gurgaon and passing through the Golbadi Road knows what I'm talking about. So the resource consumption that we have been dumping things, and we have seen that happening, and we are in the industry that contributes to the as the second largest contributor of pollution in this country. We do 150 metric tons of construction waste every year. They know that it can't be done because they are seeing their cities getting screwed because of that. I mean, Gurgaon is a dump yard, construction dump yard, right? So eventually they will speak that language, whether you tell them or not, because it is out of necessity that they have to do it. I mean, we have seen that in food and health. We will see that in homes. और उसके बाद फिर कपड़ा आएगा. But हाँ.
So I'm now, unless anybody would like to add famous last words, no. Yeah, the tiny house movement across the globe now. Yes, it is. So I have to call this fantastic discussion to an end. And I hope the panel enjoyed themselves. And it wasn't a waste of your time to come here. I sincerely hope.